Good morning, everyone. It is November 2nd, 2023. Tom Kaczynski here. It's a little after midnight. Usually not up this late, but I was doing a little bit of work and just had some thoughts to share with you. You guys always enjoy that, so good to see you all as always. And you want to support the program, reminder the Venmo CVCPRV, P.O. Box 343, Eagle Lake, Maine 04739. And I'm actually in the wood room here. Like feel the wood behind me, and you can feel the stove. It's actually the comfiest room in the house. Glad we switched to a wood stove these days. I tell you what, I like knowing that the fuel I need is right here if I need it. But anyway, so the point I wanted to get to, I suspect in not too long we're going to have a national conversation about what defending America means for people who live here, and it's something I want you to start thinking about before events happen and you don't think reasonably or you're swayed by emotions. Before, let's say, an utterly predictable event happens where maybe those ships that were put in the range of tens or hundreds of thousands of missiles get sunk, maybe off the coast of China, maybe in the Red Sea, maybe in the Mediterranean. Not sure which, but does America mean supporting international imperial adventures? At this point, it does. Does America mean supporting the woke side of the culture wars? Well, if you look at what they're recruiting for in the military, they hire more recruiters, not realizing the message is the problem. Is it that, we need to fight for global usury? I was reading an article about how we should get used to 8% mortgages on houses that now the median home price is about $300,000, even though incomes have been stagnant in real wages since at least the 90s, and by some standards since the 70s. I mean, are we just here for debt servicing? I mean, that's how we've been the last 100 years. So what are we going to be? Are we going to be an empire serving a series of corrupt kleptocrats and a gerontocracy in Washington who honestly would do us a favor if they just move on to the next place they're going? And give you a hint, it'll be a pretty warm place for a lot of those people. Don't see a lot of them who have lived or show evidence of a Christian life, that's for sure. But I ask these questions because you're going to be asked these questions, but you're going to be asked these questions after a bunch of people die in service of a policy that's insane, of leaders who probably didn't get elected, and a future plan that would be miserable for most people who live here. And I think most people, believe it or not, still want to defend America. I'd like to leave, but time may happen to best. And that being the case, what does it mean to defend America? Your family? Yeah, sure, should. Your community? Hopefully, if you like where you live. But something different, right? I mean, to defend America, what's it they make you say in the oath? Against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And our enemies are both foreign and domestic. Foreign in that they're parasites that leech on to the U.S., and domestic in the sense that many of them are homegrown and bought off. And whoever you want to blame that on or attribute it on, what you have to think about now is what you're about. Because I will tell you, this Friday could be a bad day. Hamas is winning. And they're winning because people don't want to see refugee camps getting blown up. Because, one soldier was there, potentially. They aren't going to accept that kill rate. And nor should they, by the way. I don't think so. I mean, I think Gaza's going to ride in this, believe it or not. And I'm no fan of Israel. That's no secret to anyone here. I'm a fan of the Lord, and I'm a fan of His work, and I'm a fan of people, the true Israel, which was the church, and the people who accepted the gift of salvation through the Lord Jesus Christ. But today isn't the time for that, although it should be. If you have it made right or you think you're better than it, you know what? Don't let your first prayer be your last. Build that relationship. You don't want to be the one who hears, "Be gone, I never knew you." That's biblical too. But on Friday, what we're going to see is now Hamas has been winning. Yemen is shooting up missiles at Israel with impunity. The militias in Iraq are all organizing, helped by the Iranians to some extent, to take over that country. Syria doesn't need to be said about how much they dislike the situation. And Hezbollah, with those, depending on who you believe, someone like Scott Ritter will tell you 50, 100,000 rockets, who knows, that have been in place there, could just decide that we are going to have a full-on jihad. And with every civilian attack the Israelis conduct. And whether you think they're acting in good faith or bad faith, it doesn't really matter. The pictures tell a story that's far greater than the propaganda, and you would think they would know that, but I guess they're so used to Western countries where they just get away with anything. But when they do, our government has already pretty much given them unconditional support. We've put men and women in harm's way throughout the Middle East through our policy across administrations, across years, across parties. We've put a lot of people, we spent a lot of blood and treasure, deaths on all sides to accomplish what? I don't know. I don't think we accomplished anything except running America more into debt, and some people got to enjoy their retirement, I guess, with a couple more dividend checks. But, things aren't looking up for Generation X, Y, Z, A. Go how many far letters you need to go down the alphabet, And the vax is going to finish off the people who were there from the previous generation who trusted the science, and the same people who they want to invite back now into the military after they were so rudely drummed out. Their patriotism didn't matter compared to policy, and people learned the lesson. But on Friday, Hezbollah, at 3 p.m., whatever local time is in Lebanon, it's probably like 8-9 hours off. I don't know the exact amount of U.S., so it'll be while we're sleeping tomorrow night, potentially. We'll make a decision whether or not they're going to get into this war. And it's an interesting decision because then you have Sunni and Shia fighting on the same side. And I don't think this is a holy war of Islam against Christianity. But it is a holy war for them. It's a war for Islam against a sort of neo-corporate militarism that Israel represents, that the United States is defending, that Europe is standing behind, and that the world's had enough of. They don't need it. They don't want it, They wanted the technology. So they went along with the social crap. And now they have the technology, so they will leave us to our insane social policies. I mean, look at those cities. Look at Dubai. Look at the Chinese cities and compare them, or the Japanese cities, and compare them to the cities of the West that are overrun, What would you say? Multiculturalism has wrought its influence. And I don't know if we can fix that. There isn't a Christian civilization to stand up against this. The church is here as a remnant, and we watch. America was once a Christian civilization, but we gave the kids over to the schools and out of the churches, and now there is no truth. You're not even allowed to assert truth other than who is the greatest victim. And we knew who was going to win that game. The same people who said they get burned at every outing. Well, okay. Maybe this time you did it to yourselves. When you go Dresden on a refugee camp, what do you expect to happen? Which was not surprising. And it's nothing new. Proportionality is totally lost. And if the Lebanese, the Hezbollah people, now Hezbollah is not the Lebanese government, but they are part of the functioning Lebanese society, and some of their people are in government, and functionally have the ability to project force much like a government. They don't want to get shown up in what's becoming quickly like I said, a jihad against Israel, to reclaim Palestine, actually. That's what it'll end up being once it gets started. And are we going to fight for that? And should we fight for that? And, you're not going to win that fight on that location unless you want to fight a war, full-on genocide. And maybe Israel will do that work for you, the infamous Samson option, for those of you who are not in the know. The thought has always been, ever since they built their reactor at Dimona, which may have played a role in JFK getting killed, actually, but that Israel would just bomb every capital who didn't do enough for it. Which, maybe that's why the West is doing so much. I mean, blackmail seemed to work with Epstein and all those guys. Ghislaine Maxwell, all that. Maybe the same story continues forward. But I don't think they care in that part of the world. They're ready to Zerg rush. And, in a sane world, maybe it's funny to imagine, because if Israel wasn't on the map, there'd be a border and there wouldn't be the problems there are. And I'm not saying that Jews don't have a right to have a place to live, maybe, go repopulate Ukraine. I mean, since, we got all those people killed, and, sadly, unfortunately, give part of the Russian part maybe and part of the Ukrainian part and let them do something, or wherever, it doesn't matter. Not here. We don't need them either. I know why Egypt doesn't want them. They don't want the Muslim Brotherhood in their backyard because they have a general running the country. But yet he may not be able to hold out either. I mean, at some point, the tide of the time carries things along. Like 1789 was a good example of it. The French Revolution, the madness takes over and the chaos, and forces, powers and principalities are what come out there. And principalities are states located in a certain place, as well as something that was run by a by a leader, and then where those would develop. But if they go to war on Friday, Israel's existence will likely be at risk, and we will get drawn in. I don't want it. No, I don't think you should either, but I'm just telling you it will happen, because let's be honest, AIPAC's owned Congress a hell of a lot more than the American public for a long time. The American Israeli Public Affairs Committee, who basically writes their paychecks, the real paychecks, not the little ones they take off our taxes. And when that happens, we are all going to face a decision about what we want and what we demand of America. And we will be told we need to do a lot of things, and we will hear stories about patriotism. Stories that were said in World War II that, led to the destruction of empires and the opening of all of our countries to third world ideas and third world practices. For the men who died in Korea, for a stalemate that was never resolved, for Vietnam, for abandonment of a whole generation, and of a country that was nominally our ally, for the war in the Gulf, which changed nothing, except maybe we had cheaper gas prices and the Bushes got to feel good for a little while. Pick with any of them. Everyone knows someone who lost a limb or more to an IED, especially if you're my age. I'm 40, gonna be 43 years old this month, and a lot of guys I knew who went in just to get a college education ended up getting a much deeper education than that. And for what? For what? To come home and to watch this country erode even further. And I'm not going to pretend we're going to fix this, and I'm not telling you that. But what I am telling you is that for a long time, some of us who've seen the truth of what's happening have had a very simple strategy that we can actually employ, which is that we cannot stop bad things from happening. We do not have the power to stop bad people from doing bad things. What we do have is the power to not participate, to not endorse, to bear witness. That's what we do. We bear witness. And we speak truth. And the truth is, if American forces get destroyed by some combined Islamic attack, or anything from the Russians as well, that comes out of that, given how many of their boys we've basically sent our weapons glibly over to kill, I think that you have to say, well, did we have it coming? And I don't want to minimize that for the vets. I understand. They don't have a choice at this point, but they kind of did. And, they're stuck. I get that they're stuck. But if that sacrifice happens, how do we honor that? By getting a whole generation killed fighting a war on the wrong side? Or by simply saying, you can't run this country the way you do, you have lost confidence, step down, go away? Because, let's be honest, the rioting and the terrorist attacks are coming to the cities. They're coming to the same places where terrorism has been used as a domestic political tactic. Where, Soros buys 1 out of every 5 DAs. That's what they say it is at this point. And his people get off and your people get the rope. We're not there yet, but if the side that's in charge that we nominally are backing win a world war, that will come. And if they lose, that'll be the last act they do to the rest of us before they leave. So where does that leave us? Hopefully you have some goods stored up. Because I think this thing's coming. I don't know exactly when. I hope that it takes longer, because it's too fast for what I wanted to do. But this Friday's a big day. And I've said pretty consistently, those who are in the Telegram groups, that I talk in sometimes would know. I don't have the big one anymore. I shut it down on purpose. But every now and then I talk to people and I'm like, if Lebanon enters the war, that's the path of no return. And we'll see what happens. And the funny thing is, people imagine, it's going to be a regional war against Iran. No, it's not going to work like that anymore. You're going to see something that looks like Ezekiel 38, 39. You'll see, Saudi Arabia have people in Egypt. And even if the governments don't want to, well, the Crusades didn't exist because the governments wanted them. What happened was the church said, we're going to do this. And the people said, okay, we're going to go along. And they built their own army and they just left. And that part of the world, the Houthis are a militia in Yemen. They're already on the march. You see forces moving from Iran through Iraq, including people from both countries, ready to fight for the liberation of Palestine. And this is where this is going to go. And I see no way it's going to go back, because Israel's not going to take a step back. They're not going to jump back from the abyss. If they were going to do that, they would have done it already. They're going to bet that we're going to take as many of them out as we can. And they go out there with this propaganda. It's interesting. And look, I'm no fan of Islam. You all know this about me. I don't pretend to be otherwise. But they're like, they will slaughter us. Well, the Jews lived as dhimmi under Muslims for several hundred years. And in fact, talked about how great it was compared to the Christians. Because, as is often the case, they were complaining about whomever they were under as opposed to whomever they weren't. The grass was always greener. And the first thing they did when they got their own state is they slaughtered people on the other side and just took it. And that's fine. I mean, look, that's history. We all do that. But we don't live in an age of warfare where you can do that anymore. We are in 5th generation warfare. People see these things in real time. And people watch it, and the balance doesn't help. If you're going to say one Israeli life is worth 1,000 Palestinians, everyone else is going to say, how am I going to fare in that equation? How are the Americans going to fare? How are the Brits? How are the Germans, the Russians, the Chinese? China took them off their maps. Did you see that? They just, the cities are there, but the country flag isn't, as if they know something is going to change. And this isn't a war, that I'm excited about or I want. I want it to be something that I look at with, sort of casual disinterest, because it doesn't involve us. But it does involve us because we have an own government. It involves us because the same people who are banking, who funded this, the same sordid groups who always seem to come out of the Alps, always out of the Alps, made this country, made these problems, and have promised that these problems would come to roost for a long time. So you can look up the history of it. I'm not here to tell you that. I'm here to tell you to think about what you're going to do if a fight breaks out and you're told you have to be on one side and everyone you hate is on that side. What are you going to do? And I don't know the answer to the question, but it's a question I think we're all going to ask a lot sooner than we'd hope. I hope it's years away, but, the reality is, the debt being what it is, that we have no ability to pay our bills in a world that's less likely to let us get away with it, especially as our military is shown as a paper tiger and obsolete. I think that what we'll see is that decision is made to leave us to our poverty. And you know what? Maybe that's not so bad. If we could just be left alone and have the dollar crash, then maybe we could rebuild, hold some people to account. Justice will be what the crowd demands. I'm not here to tell you what it is. You study your own history. And just, all I would say is, remember, there were no good guys. No one there. I mean, of all the people in Congress, I can maybe think of 5 who I think are worth a crap. And they show it. They show it. It's, they're bought. And that's fine. We know that. But don't put a cheap price on your own head. Don't put a cheap price on your family. Don't go rushing to anything hasty. But my first warning is, they will try. We live in a society that's used to trauma-based programming. A lot of things have been encoded, and something terrible happens to one of those aircraft carriers. A lot of people are going to be told to rush to patriotism. But how does that war, a victory or a loss, work to your benefit? This is a cold conversation, okay? Ask yourself as a Christian. Assuming you are, I hope you are. If you aren't, work at it. What would Jesus do? Well, he wouldn't pick up a sword for Caesar, that's for damn sure. And especially not for more people like Commodius, because our government's in the toilet. What would a true patriot do? Would you see Patrick Henry? Let's say you love to fetishize the Constitution. Cool. You see Patrick Henry fighting for this? Nathan Hale? Any of those guys? Dr. Joseph Braddock? Some obscure names, people who died, martyrs. For a good cause. Maybe. At least they believed their cause. Is this a cause you can believe in? I can't. I don't. I won't. I don't think you should either. But It's not in our hands, actually, which is interesting. It's a question of if enough people in that part of the world are pissed off enough about what's happening. And given what I've seen on social media, and I've dabbled enough over in foreign language land, yeah, Google's useful for translating, to know that people are ready for something larger over there because they see where the world has been and they don't want it. Neither should we. But just like they shouldn't be held hostages to bombs, neither should we. Something to think about. I'm going to get some bed. I think my Benadryl's finally kicking in. So, God bless all of you. Tom Kaczynski, Venmo, CBC, PRV. Get yourself a Bible. Get things you want on hand. And get things where you buy it and you walk away with it. That's some good advice, I think. That's all I got for you tonight. I'm not in a bad mood. I'm just being reflective and pray, Heavenly Father, just watch out for the faithful. We need you. In Jesus' mighty name. God bless.